I was being pulled for sales calls and angry clients and fulfillment stuff
Yes.
breaking until the last couple of years of the business, which completely shifted. And I traveled to maybe close to 20 countries, a lot of those trips being completely spontaneous and just last minute invite because I built it completely differently from how it was originally.
Hi, and welcome to the 91 Day Success Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Mast, and I am thrilled today to have with me Brett Watts. Brett and I recently met online and we're chatting about some things. And I thought, Brett, we need to have you on the podcast and share your story and talk a little bit about that. So, Brett, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you with us and hear your story. For those that maybe don't know who you are and all that, if you would, start by telling us a little bit about yourself and who it is that you serve and maybe how you make their lives better.
Cool, perfect. Yeah, I really appreciate that, man, and love what you're doing on the podcast here, by the way, as well. Yeah, I had an advertising agency for 6 or 7 years. I actually sold that last February, and so now I've just been helping other agencies just scale as well. Really, just any kind of service-based business that's looking help with operations, systems, automations, being able to have the business that you built amplify your life versus really
Mhm.
controlling it. And I've been like a fractional COO for some people, and it's been really fun.
Oh, awesome. I really love that. That's great. That's great. So at this point, are you primarily focused on coaching and consulting then? Or what's your primary focus right now then, Brett?
So I've got two kind of offers. One is smaller, it's a little bit less hands-on, but it's there to support, where it's basically just like a weekly call. Then they can add me to their Slack or however they communicate with their team. So if they
Sure.
want to ask questions and not have to wait till the next call, they can do that. And basically they get access to any of my assets, resources, templates, training material, whatever they need to help jumpstart it. And then the calls, we dive deeper into current situation. What are they struggling with? What bottlenecks? And then from there, we try to create a strategy that they can do, and I help with that. And then the other is more of it's a lot more intimate in meeting with their team. I see their numbers, I see their data. We really dive more into it, and I can help with whether it's the marketing, the sales, the operations, anything from there. And this is more of a fractional kind of COO slash type role,
Hmm.
and that's been
Hmm.
really fun as well. So those are the two
Sounds
main that I'm working on right now.
sounds super cool. So you mentioned you just did an exit, obviously not too long ago. Talk to us a little bit about that and about that process of what you did to build up to prepare yourself for that exit. I know it's something a lot of agency owners dream about doing and never get to.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, it was something that I didn't really plan on. It was just opportunities change or get presented, and we just took that opportunity and went with it. It's not something that I thought we were going to do for a while. I learned a lot from it, and I'm very glad that even though we weren't trying to build the company to necessarily be sellable, I come from like more of the operations background, so having SOPs and systems and automation and data tracking and all of this, just to make sure that I have all the information and transparently in front of me to make the right decisions, right? Luckily, by having all that in place, it actually made us to be a lot more sellable and appealing to potential buyers that were looking to have us. Yeah, that was like the biggest thing that I'm very thankful that we did have. And from the time I tried selling art myself personally, just through my personal network, didn't really get
Sure.
a whole lot of bites. And so ended up going with a broker, and he did a phenomenal job. And so from the time that we signed with him to getting pretty much cash in the bank, it took about 4 months, which is pretty quick.
That's super fast. Yeah.
Yeah, super fast. So I've got some friends that have sold that took well over a year, and buyers backed out and problems with financing. And luckily, we just didn't have that issue, but not everyone does. So a little bit of skill and preparation, but also a little bit of luck as well, I'd say. So,
Nothing
uh,
wrong when skill and preparation meet luck. That's a great thing when it works out that way.
oh,
So
absolutely.
talk to us a little bit more about the coaching programs. I'm really intrigued. There's so many coaches out there and consultants, and most of them obviously it seems like pose in front of Lamborghinis and are 12 years old and have never done anything in their life other than pose in front of the Lamborghini. You've obviously been one of the unique people that's actually went through the process, has built an agency, has sold it, and that. Talk to us a little bit, if you would, and tell me a bit more about how you decided to pivot into that at the sale. Was that a natural thing? Did that just come up? How did you make that pivot?
That's one thing that I love about your podcast, because it actually wasn't as easy as I was thinking. I just thought
Ah,
that I'm going to sell the business and then I'm just going to have this bright idea and the next business venture is going to be there. It actually wasn't quite that easy for me. And so it also, I went through a lot of different changes in my life as well. So moved across the country from Colorado to North Carolina, got a new house. Just I've got a 4-month-year-old baby right now as well. And so there's just a lot of moving
congratulations.
parts. Also sold the business. So all these major life events were just happening back to back. And so I debated, should I start something new and build up a new team again? My old team had the largest we got was 16 people on the team. So it's all relative. A decent sized team, small compared to some.
Absolutely.
And it just wasn't the time of my life, the chapter, to have a newborn baby as my first kid, try to start building everything from the ground up again. So I just tried to ask myself, okay, what can I do to still make a big impact, still have good results, be financially comfortable and everything from there without all the headache of building the foundation again, growing the ops, the systems, the marketing, the sales guy, just being, everything from the start again. So that's where it just led to, okay, I've already had an agency. It was a successful one. I exited it. I already know that space. So why don't I just jump into there? But I did contemplate for a while, like, should I do that or should I not? But that was just the easiest, lowest hanging fruit for me based on my situation. And then whether this is for years to come or just until the baby kind of gets more in routine, we'll see from there. So,
I love it. I love it. One of the things
yeah.
I really liked about when we first met and had the opportunity to chat briefly was I like how the fact that you're really focused on helping grow sustainable and enjoyable agencies. I've
Yeah.
been in the agency world for a long time. I know a lot of people in the agency world, and a lot of them move very quickly between I love what I do and I want to sell tomorrow because I'm so sick and tired of what I do. Talk to me a little bit and tell us a little bit, how do you help those agency owners figure out how to scale and how to grow and do that in a way that's not only scalable but enjoyable?
So I've been on both sides of it, so I can actually speak from this. So the first couple years of the business, it was, man, it was just felt like I was going upriver against the
Mhm.
currents. It's hard to take a vacation. Even when I did, I was still on Slack, on email. I couldn't set things away, either answering to the team or to the clients. I was being pulled for sales calls and angry clients and fulfillment stuff
Yes.
breaking until the last couple years of the business, which completely shifted. And I traveled to maybe close to 20 countries, a lot of those trips being completely spontaneous and just last minute invite because I built it completely differently from how it was originally, which is basically just making sure that everything is streamlined. We have SOPs and processes, both written and video, for pretty much everything. So
Okay.
if we had an employee quit or get fired or sick, whatever it may be, I could hire somebody today and not even really have to do a lot of hand holding and training because everything was so well documented. And that's one of the things that made our company so appealing to buyers was, and that's why we sold so quick, because we just had all that in place. And so really it was taking a step back of, I can't do everything, and eventually you will be the bottleneck of your own business if you try to do
Hmm.
everything. And so I had this, really, it was a mindset shift that had to be like, okay, nobody can do it as good as me. And that's going to be the same with any owner of any company, right? You're the founder.
Absolutely.
But it's better to have somebody be 80% of you in every department rather than 100% of you scattered across everywhere. And
Brilliant.
that was
Brilliant.
really what allowed me to be like, okay, maybe they won't be 100% of me, but if I can just get 80% of me in the sales, 80% of me in the marketing, 80% of me in whatever else it may be, client success or account managers, then that will be good enough where then I can just focus my energy on what's actually going to make the biggest impact. So that was really the biggest click for me to realize, okay, I've got to let go. Because for me, if I try to do everything, I was my own bottleneck.
I
If
think that's
business
something
wasn't
that so
enjoyable,
many sorry, I didn't mean to jump over top of you
no,
there,
you're
but
good.
no, I think that's something most agencies really struggle with because we're entrepreneurial, we get things going and we look at it and we go, yeah, I hired somebody, but they didn't do it as good as I did. And
Mm,
I really love your 80% perspective, and it makes so much sense. 100% of you spread over every department is not as effective as having you lead and having somebody that can do 80% of what you do in those departments doing most of that work. Much more effective. And like you said, much more scalable because it allows you to move. I know I've even seen that in my own agency over the years. As I started my first agency about 13 years ago, we grew that up, started a new agency last year. Putting things in place that allow and really subscribe to that 80% theory do help you scale and do so in a way that, like you said, the world is not going to fall apart if you step away for a few days. And that
yeah,
I think is not something that a lot of agencies get to deal with.
yeah, no,
So
absolutely.
how do you help them realize that? We've identified that's an issue. It's something a lot of agencies struggle with. How do you get those agency owners to actually let go? In my experience, that's always been one of the hardest parts is with
Hmm.
my peers that I know is just getting them to accept that need to let go or at least take a step back and let somebody else do some of that. What are some of the tactics and strategies you teach to do that? You don't have to give away all the sauce, so to speak, but just some tips on what, an agency owner listening might be able to implement there.
No, I'm an open book, so I'm happy to give away all the tips,
That's
really. So
awesome. Thank you.
the first thing that we do is I do a time audit. It's basically a Google spreadsheet that they go on. They've got columns of in the increments. So from 10 to 10:30, from 10:30 to 11:30, from 11:30 to 12, whatever that may be. They
Hmm.
basically put the activity with the drop down, and then they'll have a note. So the drop down may be client meeting, team task, email, like whatever it may be, right? And so if you do this, generally I have everybody do it for at least a week. Doesn't have to be perfect. Try to
Hmm.
be as good as you can. But if you forget, crap, I forgot this 30-minute block, not a big deal, right? Then it basically displays in like a pie chart where it's, wow, I had no idea that 45% of my time was in meetings, or 60% of my time was doing this. And generally from there, you get an idea of, okay, is that either number one, something that you enjoy, and number two, something that you're good at? And typically we can either, or number three, actually, which is that the thing that's the highest revenue generating activity based on your skill set. So if you're going in Canva, creating images and just adding different headlines and pictures and logos on it, is that where your time should be spent? And if that's
Right.
10 or 15% of your week was in Canva, just as a general example,
No,
right?
I think that's probably something a lot of people find themselves in. That's a great
Yeah,
example.
yeah. And I say that because I've seen somebody where
Yeah.
it's like, why is that the thing that you are doing? Can you do it one time and record a 5 or 10 minute loom? Give numerous examples. Let's
Yep.
pre-make templates in there. So all you've got to do is either change the header, like the headline, which is maybe company name or offer, have preset images that they can go on. If they want to switch it to their own, here's how to replace it, and then you basically have somebody else do that. And so those are things that we look at. Doing a time audit can let you know, number one, where are you really spending your time? Is it where you should be spending your time? Do you enjoy it? And is that the activity that's actually going to be moving the company forward at the rate of which you want it to grow? And chances are we can typically always find things by doing this to be like, okay, 15% of your time was doing this thing, like quit doing that immediately.
Mm,
And so then
I love
now
that.
let's divert that to something that you're good at, you enjoy, and is actually going to move the needle. So that's usually the first exercise that we do. It's hard to say for everybody what should you do without seeing it. I'm big into looking at the data, the
Mhm.
trends, and then let's let the numbers actually tell us.
I love that though, because I think it reminds me a lot of Dan Martell in his book "Buy Back Your Time," and he
Yep.
has a similar exercise there, and how effective it was for me when I did that about a year ago to walk through and analyze where I was actually spending time. Because you're right, you don't realize oftentimes where that time is being spent. Had you asked me, how much time do you spend doing this? I would have guessed and been way off. And looking at that data is really helpful. Talk to me a little bit about what people like to do. So I know, especially with entrepreneurs in the agency world, we have things we like to do, and then we have things we do because they need to be done. How do you help them go through and dissect those things, especially that maybe they don't love doing, that would be great things to replace and have somebody else do for them?
So some things, depending on size of the company, revenue, team size, things like that as well. Sometimes at the beginning, you just have to do everything. At least
Yep.
build the foundation enough to say, okay, like the Canva thing, it's okay, cool. Now here's how I would do this. Here's a template that you can edit. At least the 80/20 rule where,
Yes.
majority of it can be done. Now that doesn't mean that if you're like, I still want to see it, okay, cool. Maybe you have someone else do it, they submit it to you, and you just get your eyes on it and say, hey, thumbs up. Eventually they'll do it enough and you say, okay, cool. We no longer have to go through me for the approval process in order everything to do from there. So really I always like to ask myself, what do I enjoy, and what am I good at? And then from
Mm,
there, trying to make the decisions of everything from there. For example, let's say prospecting. Am I good at sending a bunch of cold DMs or sending a bunch of emails? Yeah, I know how
sure.
to do scripts. I know how to ask questions, but should that be something that I should be doing at volume? Absolutely not. I can get a
Exactly. Yeah.
virtual assistant to say, hey, here's the templates of what I would say. And here's 10 other templates based on the general questions or feedback you're likely going to get. How does it work? Where are you located? What's the cost? What's included? Here's a template for each of the things. And basically, I would have an FAQ library to say, hey, based on this question, you're probably going to get. And then the thing is, this continuously just grows. So if they get a question that they've never asked before, then cool. Hey, here's how I would say that. Now take that and go add it to the FAQ list. So now the next time, either you or maybe a new hire they don't have to ask that question again. And that's just what we constantly do. We're always evolving and building and improving the SOPs. It's never a one time you build it and you just walk away. There's always rooms to improve it. And so I know that didn't totally answer the question, but that's just some examples of what I do in order to help with that.
No, that
Generally,
was
most people are either, typically from my experience, either going to be more sales heavy
hmm
or
yep.
operational heavy and focus on fulfillment. I've been a little bit of both. So before my agency, I worked at a call center, managed a sales team of 16 people, ended up partnering with a guy in our agency. He wanted to do the sales and everything from there. And it was like, hey, that's cool. So then I shifted to the operations. But so I've got to just through years of doing stuff, I've been lucky enough to be really managing both sides of it so I can see the best of both worlds. But for us, it was okay, if you focus everything on sales, marketing, filling up the calendar, being the sales manager, everything from there, I will handle everything else. So once a customer pays, how do we onboard them? What tasks does our team need to do? What should the client
hmm
expect? What communication can we have automatically go out in order to have us not chasing everything down? What automations can we do in order to just streamline it where we can see transparently every stage of the process and is anything missing, and making sure that you can onboard as many clients as absolutely possible without the fear of things breaking, clients getting upset that you forget something. And that's really where I've been focusing a lot of my energy. But generally, you're either going to be one or the other for the most part.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I noticed from taking a look at what you do, you really talk about three different types of businesses that you work with. The one that's looking to obviously scale the cash flow, the one that's looking to scale and buy back time, like we've talked, and the other that's
Mhm.
looking to scale and then sell. Can you talk to us a little bit about those three different models and how what you do either is similar or maybe even different between those three models?
It's actually funny that it's all the same. And so what
Sure.
I've realized over the years is that if you build your company to sell, naturally you're building it to scale. Meaning that if I wanted to exit, what would a buyer want? They would want the owner to not be involved in the day to day, primarily either getting customers, fulfilling customers, or managing the customers. So if you can remove yourself from those, you're automatically increasing your valuation. So that's one thing. What else would a buyer want? They would want systems and infrastructure and processes very well documented. So either the new owner or management team can come in and know exactly what to do. And so those are just a couple examples, right? Whether you're looking to sell or not, if you build it to sell, naturally it just makes everything else so much easier when you're looking to scale, because you're actually building it in a way that can rely on another team internally that doesn't always pull you into the day to day, getting stuck into the weeds and saying, hey, having to fix everything because you have everything. So whether they're looking to buy back their time, whether they're looking to just increase cash flow, whether they're looking to go for an exit, it's all the same approach, which is streamlining operations, very good processes, well
hmm
documented, hiring the right people, onboarding them, and then really just collecting data on trends. How is the team performing? And basically just seeing everything and then making the decisions based off that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. I hadn't thought through that. When you scale in that manner, like you said, all of those have become options. And that's probably the coolest thing as an agency owner. Then you've got options. You've either got that cash cow that's generating consistent, predictable revenue. You've got
Mhm.
the opportunity to have time to do whatever you want, or you've got the opportunity to do an exit, whatever makes the most sense for your goals and your objectives. So
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
That's great. That's
And
great.
some people
Do
may
you-
say they want to exit, right? But that's maybe just because they feel like they're pulling their hair out. They're frustrated,
Mhm.
right? They're constantly fixing fires. But what if everything wasn't like that? What if you didn't have to do all of these and you could rely on a team to consistently do that? Would you still want to exit? Maybe, because your valuation would go up, but maybe you're like, man, like I'm not doing all that much. The revenue is great. And so if you build the company the right way, you're going to have the freedom and the luxury to be able to make that decision.
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Brett, one of the things I love to ask people on the podcast, we're called the 91 Day Success Podcast, and this might fit into what you're doing. If you were advising someone or even yourself were thinking about, if I were to start over, start a new venture, to start a new gig, and you had $1,000 in your pocket, and your goal was to generate at least $10,000 in revenue in the first 91 days or 3 months, what type of things might you recommend somebody take a look at to build that business and to start off?
Yeah, I just did this recently. Like I said, I just exited my company and I was trying to figure out what can I do and everything from there. So if I had $1,000, I would first try to figure out what are my skill sets. For me, it was I've got an agency, I've scaled it, I've exited it, I've been there, done that. So what skill sets can I have? Let's say that you've been doing a W-2 and This is your first time taking that leap of faith, and maybe you don't have some of those things. There's always something. I would probably go look to see either on YouTube or even on school and just
Mhm.
see what communities are out there in the subject matter that I'm either good at or maybe passionate about. For example, I love to snowboard. There's probably a course out there on how to be a better snowboarder and learn everything
Mhm.
from there, right? It doesn't have to be anything from there, right? So I'd either number one, what am I good at or what am I passionate at? From there, I would look on YouTube because YouTube, you can typically find people that have big channels and lots of subscribers. Typically, anyone that has lots of subscribers probably has something on the back end to sell. So I would just
Mhm.
get ideas of everything from there. Then I would go into either Facebook groups or school communities and just search to see based on those things from there and just see what other people are doing and can you model something from there. You don't have to recreate the wheel. In fact, if you see somebody doing something, it's not, oh crap, they beat me to it. It's no, it's, oh yes, that means that if they've been doing it, looks like they've been doing it a while, they've stuck to it, AKA it likely works. And so
Mhm. I
that's what
love
I would
that.
do.
I
I
love
would
that.
look in Facebook groups, YouTube, and school at the subject matter that I'm good at or passionate about, or just have good subject matter on. So maybe I was a engineer or a teacher or a whatever it may be. There's always something that people need. And then from there, I would do my first, for me, the first hire I typically made is always prospecting, which is
Mhm.
numbers game. I'm a firm believer that outflow equals inflow. So the more messages you have out, the more ads or cold calls or Instagram DMs or any kind of outreach, the more you make out there to get your name out there, the more money you can expect to come in. And it's generally directly correlated to that. So I would hire somebody for $500 a month overseas to manage a lot of that for me, which is sending out Instagram DMs, Facebook messages, cold email, and getting everything from there. I would start by scraping a list. You can use something like D7 Lead Finder, for example,
Mhm.
Lead Kahuna. There's a lot of them out there. Type the industry, scrape a big list, make sure you clean it with some type of email clean
Yeah.
verifier, like neverbounce.com, for example, and then just have somebody sending those out. And then I would give them templates that, hey, if they say these things, then say this message then, and then push them to my calendar where I only speak to those people that raised their hand, said, yes, I'm interested in speaking, and let's just fill up that calendar. And then from there, I'm also a big believer. I actually learned this from Dan Henry probably 6 or 7 years ago, which was number one, imperfect action, which is
Yes.
it's better to just have something out there than to worry about it perfect because it will never be perfect. And so
Mm.
I've ran ads, I've sent out mass emails with typos. Hey, you know what? Honestly, if somebody's going to bitch and complain that there was a typo in it, they're probably not the type of client I want to work with anyway. And so don't overstress it. And then the other piece of advice I would give is sell it before you necessarily build it. For example, in COVID with our agency, we worked with a lot of medical type of offices, and so we built out this huge course. It took hours of recording, scripts, resources on basically how to thrive, not only survive during COVID. So we started running ads to it, and man, it just did not perform at the level of which we did. If I would have gotten known fact that yes, people are interested, they're signing up, they're wanting to pay, then I would then take that resources of money that I made from it to hire somebody to help me build it at a quicker rate. That's
Great
what I would do.
advice. Great advice. I really love your plan of imperfect action. I think that's also, we as entrepreneurs often get stuck in, we want to make it better and we'll make it better
Yeah,
tomorrow. Unfortunately, we always want to make it better tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes, and we never actually press send on that campaign. We never make that phone call. We're always trying to improve. And I see that happen a lot. So I love that imperfect action across the
yeah,
board.
yeah,
Well, Brett, let me
absolutely.
ask you, if anybody's watching, we have a lot of agency owners in our audience as well as other entrepreneurs. If they're watching and they're like, man, I'd love to talk to Brett, learn more about what he's doing, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Brett Watts. But otherwise, there's a resource that I give out. I think it's a really valuable one that anybody can have, which is basically how to strategically break past revenue growth constraints. You could go to the sellableagency.com/calculator. And it's basically just a dashboard that I had built. You can plug in your current revenue, where you want to be, and then based on your certain metrics that hopefully you're tracking. If not, you can guess on it. So like close rate, show rate, and then it'll tell you what metrics you need to hit in order to confidently hit that goal. And so a lot of times people just say, I want to add another 10K in revenue. It's like, cool, how are you going to do that?
Mm,
We're going to spend more.
yeah,
We're going to it'll just come, but it's no, but have you actually done the math to figure out strategically? And by doing this is how we were able to scale and grow pretty much every single month. Now, sure, did we have other months that were harder? Yeah, that's business. But if you can figure out the metrics and figure everything out from there, then you can game plan. Okay, crap. Based on this, we're either not spending enough, or we need another closer. It helps with hiring. It helps with just everything from there. I'd recommend just download that, and I think it'll help.
Awesome. Great advice and great connections. Brett, I want to thank you for joining us today and for taking the time to share with what you're doing. I want to thank you if you're listening to the podcast. We want to thank you for sticking with us, and we'd love to hear your feedback as well. And I want to encourage you, reach out to Brett, find out what he's got to offer, and definitely take a look at that calculator page. There's some really great tools there. Or I should say, it is a really great tool that can help you figure out what you want to do. So with that, everyone, make it a great day.